Welcome to week 2 of the book club. So this is where you read, set the tone, nothing can change until you do, at home, and apply what you're reading and what you're learning and the tips and tools to your personal life, your internal world, your personal experience of what we're all going through. And then book club is where we come together and we apply all of that to our collective experience and to specifically becoming free and becoming unbound from the game, the circus, the matrix programming. So this week is chapter 2 and it's called A Conscious Choice. This week is where I introduce ego to you. And I want to start off by reading out this part of page 21. Throughout our lives, we move between ego and wisdom, fear and love. No one is in one state all the time. When we're in an ego state of mind, we are focused on our fears, limitations, what is lacking, missing, and our mistakes. Basically, we're problem focused. When we're in our wisdom, our right mind, and that is a term that I have borrowed from A Course in Miracles, we are inspired, expansive, focused on all that we can be, and in gratitude for what we already have. We are essentially solution focused. Imagine the freedom, the relief, and the sense of power you would feel if you're able to move between these two states all the time. Able to recognize ego and consciously move yourself to your right mind each time. This is what it means, or what I mean, when I speak about being awake, aware, and living consciously. Where I differ to maybe a lot of things that you have read before is that I really embrace the ego. We all intuitively kind of know it's not a great thing, right? And yes, that has been manipulated and hijacked, but we all kind of intuitively know the ego is probably not a state I want to be in. The ego is probably not the state that is going to bring me freedom. However, it has been so demonized and the whole concept has been so hijacked that we know by now, whenever something is kind of really demonized, it is often where a lot of our power lies. And this is what I believe about the ego. So I am not somebody who thinks that we get rid of the ego in order to become free. Not in this human experience. For the human experience to work, we actually need the ego. The ego is what allows the illusions to work. The ego is what allows us to feel ourselves and consider ourselves separate from each other. The illusion is what enables kind of for us to be able to live in this physical realm. We need the ego. Without it, it doesn't work. So there's that. But just like a lot of things can be both, just like the solution is often in the problem, just like a plant or a herb can be both poison and medicine, this is what I believe about the ego. So the ego is what allows the amnesia to work. The ego is what keeps us forgetting who we are. The ego is also what allows the matrix to work. It is actually the projector screen. Each one of our egos is like a projector screen. You've probably heard me talk about this before. And the matrix programming, the illusions, the game, the circus gets projected onto our projector screen. So in that sense, it also becomes the way to the exit. And just like I just spoke of then, imagine the freedom if you could consciously move between the two states. So in order to do that, you need to recognize when you're in ego. You need to recognize that the fear, the narrow, the tight, the constricted, the problem focused is the ego. And the expansive, the wise, the relaxed, the evolving, the growing, the able to receive and the able to look at things from a different perspective is your right mind. You can call it wisdom, you can call it your higher self, whatever you want to call it. The fact that you will be aware of having experienced both of those states at whatever level and range that you've been able to reach, this is what lets you know that I am not that and I am not that. Because if I was that, I would not be able to move between the two states. This is a really important key lesson. Sometimes your mind is really negative and riddled with fear, and your inner talk is really harsh and critical. And sometimes you are filled with wisdom and love, and you look at nature and you feel expansive and you feel connected and you feel happiness and love. The fact that you are able to move between those two things means I am neither one of those two things. I am greater than both of those two things, but I get to choose. And this week, I really want you to focus on the choosing. I want you to focus on the awareness of ego. And in a minute, I'm going to talk about how very specifically we can learn to have it be our guide, because this is the ultimate thing. We want the ego to be part of our guidance system. We want to parent it in a sense. We want to hold space for it. We want to be able to hear our fear. And as I'm always saying, be the adult in the room. Become really focused this week on the fact that, yes, I have an ego. This is what you're going to do in your own time this week, in your own experience of reading this book. In the collective, which is really what I'm focusing on in this book club, become really clear that we not only have our own ego, but collectively, we have like a collective ego, collective shadow, maybe you want to call it, collective fear. And this is really heightened at this time. When we become aware of how that is being manipulated and how often it's being manipulated and how often we're being triggered to be in that fear, to be in that ego, to be in that lower spectrum of things, and you start to see it and you start to consciously choose to move out of it, this is where we're really going to start to, a lot of that work you did last week about power. And if you're watching this video before week 1, don't worry about it. You don't have to probably watch this in any particular order. But if you did do the work last week, a lot of that is going to really come into its own as you start to recognize how the ego is really playing a big part in this. So the ego is the projector screen. I'm sure if you follow my stuff, you will have heard me say, if you stop buying a ticket to the circus, like just stop buying a ticket to the circus. When enough of us stop buying tickets to the circus will leave town. Your ego is your ticket to the circus. It's massive, massive. On the one hand, we need ego for all of this to work so that we can get the lessons, so that we can have the experiences we want to have, so that we can kind of have this physical experience and play around in this physical realm. And on the other hand, it is part of the key to freedom. It is part of the key to becoming unbound. How do we do that? We recognize when we are in ego. We recognize when we're in that fear state. And in that sense, so this is what I want you to do this week. We're not yet really focusing on the moving out, but the recognizing I'm in it. In like when you drive down the freeway and those little kind of strips are on the side of the freeway, and when you veer off the lane, it kind of makes a noise, it's bumpy, it's jarry, and it kind of brings you back into the lane. This is this week how I want you to really feel about ego. When you recognize I'm in a really fearful state, this is not about suppressing that fear, this is not about demonizing it, it's not about pushing it away, it's not about being angry with it or arguing with it. It is just about, oh, I'm in ego. Oh, there's that fear. Recognize it has hijacked your whole entire mind. See it as, feel it as a kind of well, not an alert, but like a guide, right? I'm veering off track. And just see yourself and feel yourself coming back on track, remembering who you are. Oh, I get to choose. I get to move out of this state. This is a choice. This is a conscious choice to move out of this state, right? So being aware, experiencing that bumpiness and that kind of like, oh, hang on, I forgot who I am. I started to veer out of my lane. I started to go off course correct. Come back to remembering who you are. The recognition of that in itself is a powerful foundation. Remember, we're building a really strong foundation. So recognizing that, bringing yourself to remembering who you are. This week, the focus is on knowing I have a choice. I have a choice whether I want to be in that state. So when you feel fear this week, I have a choice to be in this state. It's not about suppressing it and love and lighting it and having a rattle and taking the attention away to something else. No, it's about being the adult. Okay, I'm feeling this. I have a choice. I have a choice whether to stay in this state. At the moment, just leave it at that. We'll build on it. We'll build on it. But I have a choice. I have a choice whether I live from this problem-focused space or whether I move to the solution-focused space. If your next question is, I don't know how to do it, that's okay. This week, we're focusing on choice. I have a choice. And really, at its base, the choice is fear or love. Okay, let's focus on it that way this week. So, page 27, I have written this statement. It says, knowing all my thoughts, beliefs, and actions are fueling either the fire of fear or the fire of love, I now consciously choose to fuel love. So in the book, I talk about why I use that analogy of fire and the fueling. Here's how we're going to apply it to the collective. In your own life, you're going to be thinking about how your thoughts and your actions and your behavior are fueling either your ego or your right mind, fear or love. As part of our book club exercise for the collective, for becoming unbound from the circus, from the matrix, we can apply this to knowing everything I watch, everything that is said to me. Become really conscious on the intentionality of fueling fear through the language somebody uses, through on the news at the bottom where it will have alert. It's just, this is in Australia, I'm not sure about overseas, a red square with the words alert in it. And it can be about anything. It can be Maisie the cat ran up a tree and we're trying to save her, alert. It doesn't matter how benign the story is. It doesn't matter what the story is. The news now always has the word alert, triggering your ego. Become conscious of things like that. That is intended to fuel the fire of fear. So become aware of it in the external world, become aware of it in the channels that you follow on social media, the memes you're looking at, the things you're listening to, what you're reading, all of that, the languaging. It doesn't so much have to be about, I'm not saying get rid of anything that does that. Be aware, because you get to choose your response. And let's really start to become aware of our thoughts, our visions, our conversations, our choices, our behavior. What am I fueling? Am I fueling that collective kind of ego, that collective fear? Am I fueling that collective place of love? And here's the other languaging that you can use this week if you would like to. So, knowing that all my thoughts, beliefs, and actions are fueling either the fire of fear or the fire of love, I now consciously choose to fuel love. You can also change that to knowing that all of my thoughts, beliefs, and actions are fueling either the lowest timeline or the highest timeline. I now choose to fuel the highest timeline. You could change it to, I choose to feel awakening. I choose to feel evolution. Whatever feels right, you can vary it up. You can change it to different things, but become conscious of. So this week, become conscious of your choice. You are not your fear. You are not that critical inner voice. You are not that, because sometimes you're able to move out of that place. You are not just that place of wisdom and light that you sometimes have access to because you're able to move out of it. You are actually above both of those states. Your mind allows you to reach a space above both of those states. So you get to choose. You get to choose. This week, we're really going to focus on, I get to choose. If I am able to move myself consciously out of that place, I get to choose, right? There's really good stuff about ego. It is required for this whole life, physical body thing, physical reality to work. We need it for that. It is, however, also the projector screen, and I'll explain more about that. The projector screen for how a lot of the circus, a lot of the game, a lot of the matrix gets projected on us, and how it really can control our experience. So we want to be aware that it is also how we, okay, so it's a doorway to becoming unbound, to the freedom that we seek. How this starts is that we become aware that we even have a projector screen. We become aware that that's what our ego is. And then we become aware, I always have a choice. So knowing that my thoughts, and even you're in a thought, you're in a swirl, you can stop yourself and you can say, okay, I know that these thoughts are fueling fear. I know that I actually want to fuel love, evolution, expansion, the highest timeline. So then you just recognize, okay, let me course correct. You could just take a breath. It's a brilliant circuit breaker. It's always a good circuit breaker. Right now, let's stay in the awareness. We're going to build on it each week. Right now, staying in the awareness. Remembering your power. Who did I just give it away to? Remembering I have choices. What are my thoughts currently fueling? Do I want to be fueling that? No, I don't want to be fueling that. Okay. No guilt, no shame, no being down on ourselves. None of that. Just you're on that bumpy part of the road. Course correct. Take a breath as a circuit breaker. I now choose to fuel love. I now choose to fuel the highest timeline. And we're going to build on that as the weeks go on. So that's a good place. That's a great foundation builder. You're going to do it in your own home life, in your own private experience of this, and start to become aware of your place in the collective, right? We need everybody on board for this. This is a time for mastery. I spoke about it last week. This is a time for mastery. And remember, mastery just means becoming competent. This is a time for mastering our ego, gaining competence over our ego, gaining competence over our mind, being the adult in the room, and consciously choosing to fuel the flames of love, of the highest timeline, of evolution. Okay, thank you for being here. Remember, there are 2 live Q&As. I'll pop the dates under here. If you would like to be part of those, you need to send me your email address. They'll be on Zoom. And I'm really glad that you're all here. Thank you for those of you who are sharing it. Thank you for those of you who are sharing with me on Instagram, what you're learning, what you're receiving, and comments down here. I'm loving that. So please keep doing that. And please share this video out to anybody that you think would benefit. Have a great week.